Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories from China and the rest of the region. Chinese exports fall unexpectedly in October after months of rushed US orders to avoid President Trump's tariffs. Beijing is now seeking to diversify markets, turning towards Southeast Asia and Europe to offset reliance on American demand. China will reinstate soybean import licenses for 3 US firms and end its suspension on US log imports from November the 10th. The move marks a fresh sign of easing trade tensions between Beijing and Washington. North Korea's Defense Minister No Kwang-chol warns of more offensive action after a missile test and condemns US-South Korea security talks. Seoul and Washington called the launch destabilizing amid US sanctions on North Korean entities. The US military says North Korea's latest ballistic missile test poses no immediate threat but warns of its destabilizing impact. Washington says it is in close consultations with allies and ready to defend against any provocation. Taiwan's Vice President Kim visits Belgium and addresses European lawmakers in a rare move defying Beijing's warnings. Several European nations, including France and Poland, have welcomed Taiwanese officials despite China's objections. Typhoon Kalmegi slams into Vietnam's central coast, killing at least 5 people and injuring 7, according to the environment industry. The deaths were reported across the provinces of Quang Ngai, Gia Lai and Dak Lak. China joins Brazil-led COP30 carbon coalition. China will join a Brazil-led alliance aimed at linking global carbon markets and harmonizing trade standards at COP30 in Belém. The initiative, backed by the EU and UK, seeks to build a foundation for a global carbon credit system. Now 5 people are killed and 6 wounded in cross-border fire between Afghan and Pakistani forces, according to an Afghan health official. Both countries blame each other for the latest violence along the Kadamar-Balochistan frontier. Now, China's exports have seen their sharpest decline since February as new tariffs continue to weaken demand from the United States. The latest customs data shows that China's overall exports fell by 1.1% in October, reversing a strong increase the month before and falling short of market expectations. The decline comes after months of Chinese manufacturers rushing to send goods abroad in anticipation of higher US tariffs. Despite Beijing's efforts to diversify trade relationships, the United States remains a key destination for Chinese exports, and the impact of tariffs has been significant. Shipments to the United States dropped more than 25% compared to the same month last year. Moreover, exports to the European Union and Southeast Asia did edge higher, but not enough to offset the decline in US demand. Meanwhile, in a contrary development, exports to the United States rose by 1.8% on a month-to-month basis in October. Yet, Chinese imports from the United States declined by 11.6% during the same period. This monthly data by China's General Administration of Customs had come ahead of talks between President Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, which temporarily eased trade tensions at the end of October. Recent talks between the two leaders resulted in a 1-year pause on certain tariff measures, though most duties remain in place. US-bound Chinese goods continue to face average tariff levels around 45%. And at the same time, China's overall import growth has also slowed. Imports rose just 1% in October, marking their slowest expansion in 5 months and reflecting continued weakness in domestic consumption. Imports of crude oil, iron ore and soybeans did increase, while copper imports declined amid weakness in the construction sector. Now, of course, joining us to discuss this is Collins Chong-Yu-Keat. He's a Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst, and he joins us live from the University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much for joining us, Collins.
Thank you, Thomas.
Pleasure to have you. China's exports here have seen their sharpest fall since February after, of course, the US tariff bite. How serious is this slowdown for Beijing's economy?
We have seen how this explains well the urgency being shown by President Xi in wanting to have these tariff talks with the US. Trump has been right all the while that China has been reliant on the US market for decades now, and the cards and chips are still with Washington in terms of compelling Beijing to do more in terms of reducing the tariff surplus and having this level playing field in accepting more of the US goods. And this is now being reflected with this reality. It's a harsh wake-up call to Beijing that despite its efforts to have this increased fallback options of leveraging on different markets to replace the US market, it has not been successful so far. And the US also has the options of other markets as compared to China. So we have seen how Southeast Asia, East Asia and South Asia have been the traditional places for Beijing as part of its economic friendshoring efforts, but of course also with BRICS as well as the global South. But we have yet to see the purchasing demand, the buying power of these regions and these nations. They simply cannot substitute the sheer volume of the US market. So this is a wake-up call to Beijing that despite efforts to increase its own friendshoring efforts, it has clearly failed, and that the only way forward is to have these productive talks with Washington, and of course also to have this a much more a fairer trade deal with the US. So we have seen also how the US still has the options with allies, with the EU, with these new growth centers in Southeast Asia and other global South countries also, simply because of the fact that they have been reliant primarily on the US market for their growth model, for their economic progressive models. And they do not see the Chinese economic model as the a reliable long-term support system for them because of this weak productivity growth and this weak purchasing power from China. We have seen this this downturn in terms of domestic economic woes. So simply because of the fact that the US still remains as a primary economic support for these regions, and hence the equation has always been on the advantage of Washington in terms of trade, in terms of tariff, and hence we have seen how Beijing is now compelled to increasingly be aligned with Trump's moves in this regard, as can be seen in the tariff talks earlier. Thomas.
Yes, and Collins, China will also restore soybeans licenses to 3 US firms on November the 10th. How much of a concession was this, Beijing, and how much will it advance Washington?
Well, we've seen, Trump will have anticipated this move, and and of course, this is also with regards to other parallel measures in place in terms of not only on soybeans, but on the overall trade volume with China, and of course also on the subject of critical minerals, which of course also China has been increasingly relying on that to be used as a bargaining chip with the US, and now with this new data and statistics that the downturn of the exports and this increasingly this Beijing being at a disadvantage in terms of this tariff deal with the US. So now, of course, they might want to have this to use this soybean purchase as a gesture of positivity with regards to its relations with Washington, and of course also hoping for Washington to give a fairer trade deal with Beijing. So I think it's a positive move by Beijing, and that now it shows its hands now, and he has proven Trump to be right all the while, and we will see that the advantage still lies with Washington in terms of getting the needed economic returns from Beijing.
Yes, Collins, do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of China. We move on now and over to Europe, where the mission of China to the European Union has formally protested the visit of Taiwan's Vice President to the European Parliament. China has stated that the visit goes against its One China principle and amounts to interference in its internal affairs, adding that it could strain political trust between Beijing and the European Union. Meanwhile, Taiwan, on its part, maintains that it has the right to engage with other countries and international institutions. Now, the visit in question saw Taiwan's Vice President Hsiao B-Kim travel to Belgium yesterday, where she spoke at a session with lawmakers inside the European Parliament in Brussels. The appearance of Taiwan's Vice President formed part of a gathering hosted by an international parliamentary alliance that discusses global approaches to China policy. This trip marks a significant moment in Taiwan's outreach efforts towards Europe, especially given that the island only holds formal diplomatic ties in Europe with the Vatican. During the trip, Taiwan's VP Hsiao was accompanied by Taiwan's Foreign Minister Lin Chia-lung. Moreover, reports also say that the former Taiwanese president is expected to visit Berlin for a conference next week. Collins joins us once again to discuss this. Collins, China has launched protests after this visit by the Taiwanese official in Brussels. How significant is this, given Europe's usually cautious approach to Taiwan?
Well, Europe didn't accidentally host Taiwan's VP. Brussels knew exactly what it was doing, and this is a classic European signaling that it won't let Beijing dictate who can or who cannot enter the European Parliament. So, of course, China has lodged a formal protest, but this we have seen how the EU is already in a confrontational cycle with Beijing, whether it's on EV tariffs, whether it's on tax equity reviews, on sanctions on Ukraine, China's support for Russia in Ukraine. So, allowing a Taiwanese VP to appear in European Parliament is a way of saying that Europe also has its own leverage, and if Beijing was to escalate in economic terms with regards to the EU, then the EU will have these political tools to retaliate. So this is a political signaling, and that Brussels is also shifting from economic dependency to strategic balancing. So this high-level Taiwanese visit to the Parliament, is a calculated step in showing the EU is not afraid to open an alternative political channel, and at times where China is growing more in terms of bellicosity, in terms of assertiveness. So I think this is a soft hedging, and of course Europe is in need of Taiwan's semiconductor superiority, and of course we have seen how the European Parliament has always been the ground for this high-level values-based alignment in terms of democracy, in terms of human rights, and this is a classic political symbolic message to Beijing in all terms.
Yes, Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme and for bringing your insight here on NewsX World. Now we move on next. And China is set to join a Brazil-led coalition to connect carbon markets across major economies. This is one of the initiatives to be adopted at the COP30 in Belém on November the 7th. The Open Coalition for the Integration of Carbon Markets, developed by Brazil's Ministry of Finance, aims to align standards and make trading carbon credits easier between nations. Alongside China, the European Union, Canada, Chile, the United Kingdom, Armenia and Zambia are expected to participate. Brazil says the voluntary partnership will boost transparency and liquidity, helping members meet goals while directing parts of the proceeds to clean energy and climate adaptation projects. Finance officials call the plan a key legacy of COP30 and a practical step towards a unified global carbon market that balances growth, inclusion and environmental protection. Joining us now is Sankalp Suman, the Chief Climate Strategist. He joins us live from Upandishad Consulting in Tokyo, Japan. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here on the program. Now, the Open Coalition for the Integration of Carbon Markets is one of the key proposals of Brazil's tenure as the chair of the UN Climate Change Conference. How should we view China's acceptance of the proposal, Sankalp?
So this is very interesting actually, because this comes in the background of Washington coming out of the Paris Agreement, and now it seems that Beijing is taking the forefront in driving the climate conversation. So far, this coalition has only had Western powers. UK has been part of it, EU has been part of it, Canada, Brazil is of course leading it. But with China, which is also the world's largest emitter, which is almost 30% of more than 30%, in fact, of global emissions come out of China. This is a big move, and this will signal it. This will send a signal to other nations also, like India and Indonesia, Malaysia, who are also large emitters. That this is a coalition. This is the coalition that they should be at.
Yes, and can you explain to our viewers, Sankalp, how the carbon credit markets operate?
Right. So carbon credits is a very simple concept because it's global warming. It means that anyone can emit anywhere and anyone can save carbon anywhere because it would net it affects the whole atmosphere. So what carbon credits does is companies that are not able to reduce their carbon emissions, they pay someone else to buy carbon credits. The person that is selling carbon credits basically reduces their is reducing the carbon from atmosphere. For example, a Google would pay a farmer in India to use organic farming in their fields, which would reduce their carbon footprint. But the farmer cannot claim that as his own reduction because he would have sold those rights to Google, and that's how the carbon markets work. Particularly in Paris Agreement, there is an Article 6 which governs this whole mechanism in which developed countries buy carbon credits essentially from developing countries. There's Article 6.2 in which countries' NDCs are covered, and then 6.4 where voluntary carbon credits also are traded.
Yes, and Sankalp, Brazil's finance ministry has stated that a key goal of this coalition is to make systems compatible, increase liquidity, and also, of course, transparency to help members meet their Paris Agreement targets. How do you envision this working out?
This is actually very important because, when we talk about the global carbon markets, the language is usually not the same in different countries. EU has certain priorities, China has certain priorities. Even the prices of the carbon credits in China, it's $10, in EU, it's $100. So there's a huge variation that happens. So while linking all of these markets together, of course, China's prices would go up. That would affect their heavy industries, but it would also, lead for more finance flowing towards tropical forest conservation in Brazil. So these markets, once they integrate, it creates a net common language for all of these economies to continue. Otherwise, right now, there's a very fractured carbon market where two countries do not agree on the same standard, they don't agree on the same formulas to calculate carbon credits, and therefore the finance is mostly stuck. It's not able to flow. Where it flows, there's not the same kind of transparency rules that apply to them, and therefore a lot of double counting and other things happen.
Yes, thank you very much, Sankalp Suman, for joining us here on NewsX World, and thank you for bringing your insight. We now move on, and following the meeting between the defence chiefs of the United States and South Korea near the demilitarised zone between North and South Korea, the Defence Minister of North Korea has now condemned the talks and stationing of the USS George Washington aircraft carrier in South Korea, warning that the move heralds the critical access, further escalating tension on the Korean peninsula. This comes days after North Korea carried out yet another ballistic missile test off its coast, further straining ties between the two nations. No Kwang-chol, the North Korean defense minister, put out a statement alleging that the USA and South Korea are conspiring to step up deterrence efforts towards the North and to integrate their nuclear and conventional forces. The South Korean Defense Ministry has now condemned North Korea's missile tests and stated that it is regrettable that the North criticised US-South Korea annual joint drills and the meeting. The South Korean Defense Ministry statement has also urged North Korea to immediately stop acting like that escalates inter-Korean tensions. Okay, now joining us is Dr. Sanjay Kumar. He's a journalist at the Korea Herald. He joins us live from Seoul in South Korea. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Kumar. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. North Korea has vowed offensive action following these security talks. What exactly does that mean, Dr. Kumar?
This means that North Korea is practicing. They are using the calibrated messaging that they have been doing since decades. Just after the armistice agreement, which was signed in 1953, they means North Korea has always seen South Korea and US exercises as threat and a means to invade North Korea in long run. This is how they have convinced their elites, the military, and this is how public in North Korea has been informed, galvanized, and we can say that they have capitalized this propaganda or agenda, whatever you can call. And this backlash that we are seeing in the South Korean media as well as among the South Korean people, it is very logical because when it comes to inter-Korean relations, from South Korean side, they have always been open to dialogue, and recent administration, President Lee is also very much emphasizing on that. So from South Korea and US, it is nothing new. But if you see the cycle of threats and the cycle of condemnation from the North side, it is nothing new too. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Kumar, just very briefly, of course, Seoul and Washington, very close allies. We've spoken about those drills previously, and you've also spoken about the new South Korean President Lee Jae-myung's intentions to thaw relations with the North. How effective has that been, of course, given Seoul's close ties with the US?
This has been little effective. We cannot say it has not been effective, but the recent sanctions that have been imposed by the US side has sent them again a strong signal that if North Korea is not ready to dialogue, then there would be implications, and that this consultation is also one of the aspects of it. It is not new because US ROK alliance remain intact, ironclad, and it is a responsibility of the alliance to have regional stability. But from North Korean side, they have used this as a coercive diplomacy, and that is why they have been using tools such as missile tests and this kind of condemnations and different kinds of propaganda. So this coercive diplomacy must be tackled well from South Korean side, and South Korean people as well as US side is also looking very closely on this.
Yes, Dr. Kumar, thank you very much. Do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of the Korean Peninsula. The US military has also spoken about the North Korean missile tests, saying that the tests have been assessed and pose no threat to the American assets and allies in the region. They have also stated that they are actively consulting with their allies in the region to continuously assess the situation in the Korean Peninsula. Dr. Kumar, the US, of course, has said that these missile tests, these ballistic missile tests that North Korea tested just a few days ago, poses no immediate threat to the United States assets and its allies in the Indo-Pacific. Does that suggest that Pyongyang is testing limits rather than planning confrontation?
Well, Thomas, this should not be seen as testing the limits. There is no red line so far because they are already on ceasefire. North and South is on ceasefire, so definitely, North Korea knows that any offense is going to offend the US ROK alliance, and they are much stronger than North if they go into war in unfortunate and hypothetical situation. But there is, of course, a security dilemma kind of thing that they try to impose to the global public as well as the regional, regional level engagement and to disturb the regional level talks in this area. And the recent Russia-China alignment, they leverages North Korea to speak in this language. So it is a very calibrated messaging to just protect their regime, as well as sending and disseminating the information in a way that, look, we are having existential threat. I mean, the US ROK exercises and these consultations, it threatens our existence. So with this kind of rhetoric, they want to utilize it. I mean, North Korea want to utilize it to get the support of their elites and military personals. Yeah.
Dr. Kumar, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you here on the program. Thank you for taking the time. We now move on to our next story, and the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has recently met with Georgian Foreign Minister Makabocharovsky in Beijing to strengthen their bilateral ties. During the meeting, Wang Yi has stated that China views its relationship with Georgia from a long-term strategic perspective and has expressed readiness to deepen cooperation in trade, connectivity and cultural exchange. It has also called for closer alignment under the Belt and Road Initiative, further inviting Georgia to join the International Organization for Mediation. Reaffirming Georgia's commitment to the One China policy, Foreign Minister has said that the CB also hopes to advance talks on upgrading their existing free trade agreement. Following the talks, both sides have reportedly committed to expanding partnership and cooperation to support global stability and mutual development. The French Finance Ministry has halted the suspension proceedings of the Shine that were initiated 2 days ago. This comes as the Chinese retailer withdrew all illicit products from its platforms. The French government stated that the process to block Shine in France after it found underage resembling adult products and weapons for sale on its site. The same day, the fast fashion retailer opened its first physical shop in a Paris department store. The Finance Ministry said it would suspend Shine's entire website in France, not just a marketplace, if banned products continue to be found for sale. Now, the French consumer watchdog has observed that all the illegal products, including medicines, were no longer available on Shine. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has asked the situation to be evaluated again next week. And that's a wrap on the China report for today. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.